Yo, what is going on, Mellow_Magikarp's YouTube? Today, you're not going to get Kevin. You're getting more Alex time. That's all right. Kevin's away at the World Championships right now, currently winning the World Championships, probably. Or, you know, looking at an Eiffel Tower or whatever else is in London. But today, he's tasked me with taking over the YouTube and talking about some support Pokemon. He wanted me to create a tier list of the best support Pokemon of all time. So he gave me a list of support Pokemon. I kind of gave him a little bit of notes and said, hey, these should be here, these shouldn't be. But we're going to talk about a tier list of support Pokemon all time. Not just current format, but like the all-time support Pokemon. If you think we missed one on here, just let us know. We'll figure that out later. But before we get things going, I wanted to talk about what we mean by support Pokemon. We mean anything that helps you set up or helps you sustain throughout the game. We don't mean anything that helps you do additional effects like a Lycanroc GX, Ninetales, or a Luxray GL level X. Anything that like Gust effect. No, that's not really a support Pokemon. Anything that like moves energies around. While it is supporting in nature, we're talking about purely just like set up support Pokemon. So no like base set Venusaur, no Aromatisse XY, no Clink Clang, nothing like that. Nothing that helps you like wall either. No Bench Barrier Mr. Mimes, nothing like that. No Xurkitree GXs. No Mewtwo level X's, nothing that helps you like wall anything. We're talking purely just like setting up as a support Pokemon, right? The other caveat with this too is we're talking things that are like purely support Pokemon. There are a lot of things that are hybrid, and you're going to see that I'm going to put those into their own tier. I'm going to say, hey, these cards, great at getting you set up. They're great things, but they're also more hybrid, and I'm going to talk about those why. I'm actually probably just going to get started with those Pokemon, right? We're going to get those going straight into the hybrid tier list. You got to put Zoroark GX down there, right? Zoroark's with the trade ability, discard a card, draw 2 cards. It's very similar to Empoleon's Diving Draw, which also goes in the hybrid. Now, if you played during the Sun and Moon era, you know Zoroark GX. Zoroark GX is a great attacker. It was paired with a lot of different things, so it is technically a support Pokemon, but that's like saying Arceus V-Star is a support Pokemon because, like, yeah, it gets you set up because you only get to search for 2 cards, but it's also like the main attacker. Zoroark's the same way. Same with Empoleon. Empoleon was paired with a lot of things during its entire life. Sure, there were times where it was used as a support Pokemon, such like in Archie's Night March sometimes played it as like a support aspect, but really it was always just like the main attacker of a deck. It's going to be same with Gardevoir, Telepass. Right? Psychic Lock is just a really, really good attack. This dominated the 2009 World Championships. It helps you get set up because you're copying their supporters in the discard pile, sure, but you also are stalling them out with this Psychic Lock attack. Now, Gallade could also be considered the main attacker of those decks, but it was all about Gardevoir, let's be real. Other things that are hybrid, I know there was more on this list. Where I'm missing, Metagross, right? Crush and Burn, you combine that with Dragonite. It works very similar to the Dynamotor of the Black and White era. You recharge energies back onto your field and blow up things with Crush and Burn. Sure, Delta Control did help you like look at the top 4 cards of your deck and rearrange them, but it was really like the main attacker of the deck, right? Another thing that could, in theory, be put there is Ninetales. I think the reason... Oh, sorry, here's the other one. Sorry, Gallade. And then I'll talk about Ninetales. Gallade was definitely, like, not built as a solely support Pokemon. It was always an attack Pokemon, although Premonition is really, really good in those decks. It was a few times it was paired with Artillery, but most commonly you saw it in Night March to help, like, get out of those sticky situations with N, or not N, but, like, I don't know, late game stacking your decks. But it was really all about the sensitive Blade attack, too. Everything that played a Gallade could attack Gallade. So there's that. And the other one that's a debate to go there or not is that Ninetales. I think a lot of people use the ability to search for 2 items, right, and get set up. And it was nice and everything. And like most people built it so that you could attack with fairies. But like the 2 most common decks that you saw in were Zoroark-based decks and like Gardevoir-based decks. So both of those could also just like pivot to attacking when they wanted to. So it's kind of weird to put that there because a lot of people just used it for the ability, but it was never a main attacker like these other things were. So that gets that out of the way. Now, clear and above, S tier. I added this on. Kevin wanted me to do just A through F, right? But I added an S tier on because I think Cleffa needs to go in its own tier, or at least there might be like 1 or 2 that maybe tickle the S tier a little bit. But in my mind, what makes a really, really good support Pokemon is something that can go in everything, right? It's something that is not only splashable and everything, but is played and everything. And not only is it played like as a 1 or 2, but played as like a 4 right? Like really, really played. And if you look back to when this card first came out, it was everywhere. Go ahead and look up like base set through base Neo decks or Rocket On decks. Rocket On especially. I built that format once and I was like, okay, I need 4 Cleffa every deck. There was like one deck that played 3 Cleffa for whatever reason, the lists that I saw. But no, Cleffa saved the game. If you want to check out more rants about Cleffa, go check out James, Arnold, and I's episode where we were on the podcast with Kevin, I don't know, 10, 20 podcasts ago. And we talk about Cleffa in length. So it needs to be in its own tier. Oh, I think this has a hole in it. Oh, it does! Oh, no, I dribbled. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. So from here on out, I think I'm just going to go in order. No reason skipping and trying to just go A through F. So we'll just go in order. Claydol gets an A tier for me. While it wasn't in necessarily every single deck ever during its existence, it definitely was the best draw option at the time. And it still remains one of the better draw options pretty much ever, right? If you had a Claydol in any format, you'd probably play it. Especially if you had like during the XY era with Karina, woof, it'd be super good, right? In an era where you don't really draw cards with your supporters, Claydol was like this shining way to like get cards, like Claydol on Uxie, right? Very, very good card, very consistent, easy to set up. Eek Cleffa, I want to put as a B tier. It's not quite to the same level as A tier was. Like, people played like 1 or 2 Cleffas here and there, but there are some people that like opted not to play a high count because it was a liability at times. There were some metas where it just like wasn't as good. And then once the black and white forms started to really come in, people started playing less and less Cleffa. So it really didn't have the longevity that the first Cleffa from Neo Genesis and Great Encounters Claydol did. Harkle Silver Cleffa was really, really good for a little bit of time, but people exploited it. And eventually just we took a back seat to like really powerful draw supports. Pidgeotto from Team Up, that's the, look at the top 2 cards. I'm gonna put that in D tier. It was really only played in like what, control decks. It wasn't splashable, not everyone played it. By this point we had so many better options for draw. And that's what makes the support Pokemon just not as good. When you have better options out there, they're just naturally not going to be as played, right? And that's the case with this Pidgeotto. Now this Pidgeot, whatever you prefer, it's an interesting case because like I think it still deserves like an A tier mention, although it wasn't played in literally every deck, and there were direct counters to it. But you can't overlook the just raw power of the ability of once during your turn, search for a card, right? If your opponent didn't have a Lunasol out in play, or why am I blanking on it? It's not Space Center. Is it Space Center? What's the card that the stadium? I am blanking big time. It's the stadium that shuts off colorless Pokemon. But like, if they didn't have one of those out in play, just grab a card, right? Not to mention the fact that it had free retreat and a really good attack, right? 40 damage and they can't retreat, really good. So I think it still deserves A tier, even though there's a lot of counters out there for it. Really great. Jirachi's an interesting case. I think Jirachi is like down here if it weren't for a skateboard, right? A skateboard really made this card shine and shine well. So we're gonna put it in the B tier for now. Being able to use the ability and not really have to worry about the repercussions of staying asleep, and then being able to pivot between those with a bunch of switches and a skateboards and all this other stuff made the ability really good. It's top 5 cards, grab a trainer, put them back. Now, it was based off of this Jirachi here, which is top 5 cards, grab any card, you're now asleep, and if you stay asleep, you don't get to use the ability, right? I'm going to put it in C tier. While it was played heavily and played as 3 or 4 counts, it didn't quite have the impact, longevity, and the pairings of partners that Jirachi did. Team Up Jirachi did. The Deoxys Jirachi was really, really good, but you have the Holon engine in that format. You have Quick Search Pidgeot. You have a lot of other things when Jirachi was around. It was really good. It just didn't have the same sort of longevity or the same sort of staying power of being in every single deck. Stellar Wish Jirachi is an interesting one. Stellar Wish Jirachi is you bench, search for a supporter, put it in your hand. There's 3 of those actually, right? We're going to go ahead and clump them all here. All three of these Pokemon, the Lele, the Lapras, and the Jirachi, all have the same effect when you bench it, search deck for a supporter. I'm gonna put them all in different tiers. We're gonna put Lapras. It's hard either C or D tier here because the thing is with Lapras, like you had a Holland Transceiver. Holland Transceiver is like search deck for a Holland supporter, and that's basically the same thing, but you don't have to use up a bench spot. The other thing is that there's no cards that like directly search out Lapras, unlike Jirachi and Lele. Like Jirachi had Level Ball, and Lele had Mysterious Treasure and Ultra Ball and all this other stuff. So you don't have anything that like really directly searches it out that well. And supporters back then weren't really drawing cards. You had Rocket's Admin as a draw supporter, and then the Holland's cards. But again, if you're playing the Holland's cards, you're playing the Holland engine. So Lapras really is like maybe a one of in every deck, in some decks, right? Whereas Lele was a 2 or 3 of in every deck. All of the supporters were super good, and the fact that a lot of turn 1 supporters needed to be played, right? You think about Lily, you think about Bridget, and then eventually Elm's Lecture, right? Being able to grab a Lele with your Ultra Ball or your Mysterious Treasure, bench it and set up all your stuff, amazing, right? And a good attack to boot. I'm not really ordering these tiers, but it would be up a little bit. Lele was, 2 or 3 in every deck. And so Jirachi, I think, puts a little bit in the middle here. It was a vastly underplayed card. 90 HP Pokemon sitting on your bench when Lysander was running everywhere was really not what you wanted. But it's still like an amazing card that didn't get the respect it deserved. So I'm going to put it in B tier, even though my argument could be C tier. Shaymin EX, everyone knows this. This has these two, also very, very similar abilities to where this is bench draw 6, this is bench draw 7. Shaymin's going to get the A tier from me. A tier treatment. Anyone playing an EX format knows that that is an A tier card. You're playing Ultra Ball, you're drawing cards, you can use it over and over and over again, and if it ever gets annoying, you can play a Parallel City, you can Sky Return it, you can bump it any way, shape, or form. There were decks that were revolving around just knocking out your opponent's Shaymin. You combine this with heavy draw engines like Versus Seeker and Sycamore. You're drawing through your 20-30 cards turn 1. Shaymin, an amazing card. Oh, and Skyfield too, not to mention, right? Go up to 8, bench a bunch of Shaymins. If they bounce your Skyfield, discard all your Shaymins, you're fine. Shaymin gets the A tier. Uxie actually also gets the A tier from me. Again, in those formats, in those Diamond and Pearl formats, a lot of the supporters didn't really draw cards. Uxie served as your only draw supporter. You could reset it, and it has Uxie level X to draw you even more cards. It's very similar to Pidgeotto's ability from Team Up. So Uxie, very, very powerful. Shaymin, very, very powerful. If you're comparing the two, I would give the nod to Shaymin. While Uxie was good, you played a 1 or 2 of in almost every single deck. The bench space issues that 2010 and 2009 give you, Power Spray, and the fact that it goes back to the deck when it resets just aren't as good. Whereas Shaymin is way better in every single sense. It's one less card, sure, and it's an EX, but that really doesn't matter. The other one that actually falls in that category is Dedic, right? And I would actually put that probably in B tier. While it was really, really good, it's hindered by the fact that you can only use it once per turn. It's just a solid card. Bench it, discard, draw 6. The thing is, it's just not played in every single deck, right? It just wasn't in everything. It was played in a lot of things, and the things that it was in was disgusting, right? You think about stuff like Pikarom, where you can play an Electromagnetic Radar, grab an attacker and 6 more cards. Super good, but it wasn't like that in every single deck. Towards the later stages of its life, it was played everywhere, but when it first came out, it wasn't like, I need 3 of these, 2 of these in every single deck, much like Shaymin was, much like Uxie was. So Dedenne took a little bit of time to get going, and then it still just wasn't the king. So B, maybe even C tier. People might rage though. I don't have the same sort of thing here that's the same sort of like Electrode deal. This had a draw till you have 5 in your hand. Electrodes draw till you have 4. I'd put Abyssal Hand. Oh gosh, I'm doing this live. I haven't prepped this. Maybe C tier. It's a good card. It was played, but it was played in very specific decks. It was played with like Delayed. It was played with Gardevoir at one point, but it wasn't in everything. Brooklet Hill made it a little bit more accessible, so decks that were playing Brooklet Hill could start playing it. But it wasn't just like the rampant everywhere monster that everyone kind of expected it would be. Smooth over Metagross, and I'm assuming the problem is we also didn't put this. We didn't split up the Metagross. I'm realizing we didn't put 2 Metagross. because there is the Metagross from the Ruby Sapphire era, and then there is the reprint of this exact Metagross from the Sun and Moon era, and both of them were played pretty heavily, right? And both of them were enabled by things that could just like draw cards off the top. You got to think about Ludio Cargo. The side story on that is that when we printed out not proxy sheets, but like label sheets for all the old formats, I accidentally called that deck Ludio Gargo, and that's what's stuck in my brain. Ludi Cargo is the name of the deck. Plays this, right? It was played sparingly here and there, right? But it wasn't everywhere. Whereas like single prize decks in like the Sun and Moon era could play stuff like this and tutor stuff to the top of their deck. So if you combine them both together, it gets like a solid B tier from me. It doesn't get an A tier just because it wasn't everywhere, right? It wasn't in every single thing, but it was a very, very solid card. As an aside, I think that's what the B tier is. B tier should just be referred to as like solid. You know what I mean? Like if you're just like, this is a solid card. Whereas like we like to call these butter cards, right? The reason we call it butter is because it goes in everything, right? That's how good the card is. It just goes in everything. That's what a butter card is. A solid card is like, it's in a lot of decks. It's not, you know, we'll call it, here's what we'll do. We'll call this Outclassed, right? We'll call this the LOL one. This is Hybrid. We'll call this tier Lefa, and C tier we'll call the C tier. Yeah, that's what we'll call this. Anyway, so B1 just solid. Metagross solid its entire life. It really goes the same with Oranguru, honestly. Because Oranguru is just a solid card. It was in single prize decks, much like Metagross was, right? You paired those two together, tutor something at the top of your deck, draw that card instantly with Metagross. So it was paired a lot with that. It was used as like a failsafe for N in the early days, and just as like a good out to a lot of things with a pretty decent attack if you could get it off. All right, we're moving through here. How much time have I used? Oh my gosh, I told Kevin we'd get this under a half hour. Easy mode, under a half hour, no problem. Oh, I forgot to put Crowbat in the whole like Uxie Shaymin conversation. Man, we'll talk about that in a second. These two guys, these both have the exact same ability. It's called Let Loose. Bench it, both players judge, right? Both players shuffle, draw 4. Both of these were played very, very differently. I would say Giratina really wasn't played at all. You don't see it a lot. There wasn't anything that could like get it out fast. Had 3 retreat, took up a bench spot, and it was in a format where like, yeah, Marshadow was in a format where judging exists too, but like judging people just wasn't as good because most people just had like Claydols on the bench. They're just ready to go, right? Whereas this Marshadow is probably pretty polarizing. It's a card that eventually got banned, right? And you can get it out turn 1 and put your opponent down to not very many cards. It's searchable with Ultra Ball and with Mysterious Treasure, just like Lele, and it just puts your opponent at a really big disadvantage turn 1. Decks that could afford the bench space played it. Even decks that didn't afford the bench space, like Malamar, played it. Think about that for a second. Malamar, the brickiest bricks of all bricks, right, could play a Marshadow. They'd just throw on their bench and be like, I hope I draw something off of this. Insane, right? That's how good this card was. It gets an A tier for me. Like, it. What are your opinions on it or not? It's an A tier card. It's an A tier card. Spiritomb to me, these two are really, really hard to put because they're good, right? They're just both really, really good cards. They're butter. They go in everything. Everyone played like a Spiritomb that could evolve. Some decks didn't, right? Lux Chomp didn't because you don't need to, right? But that format was a lot of evolutions and a lot of things around it. So when it came out, it was like, yeah, it's going to go in everything that plays evolutions outside of Lux Chomp. Lux Chomp's PDIF, I know, but whatever. Sableye, also good. You could probably just put it in the B tier too. It's at the low A tier, high B tier for me. It's a good card. It gets you set up. Not a lot of draw support in that format, but really, like, once Collector came out, you started seeing it a little bit more. And then Sable Donk, obviously, Sable Control. There's a lot of really cool things with this card. It gets an A tier for me. Delcatty was also played in a lot of decks. However, once like the Holon engine came out and once things started shifting more towards a just kind of like other draw supports and other deck things, it wasn't played as much. I think it's a B tier card for me. It's very, very good. It's solid, right? But it's not C tier. It's better than these cards. It was played a lot in its early days, but then once Twilight started coming out, once the end of the Ruby Sapphire era started creeping out, it got pushed out. It was really big in what, like 2005? But when you 2004, 2005, right? But then when you look past that, you don't see it all. And then when you look at like the RSPK block formats, it's rarely played. So it's a good, solid card. It was played a lot right away, but then it just like got outclassed by other things. I missed the hybrid. Magnezone needs to be in the hybrid category, right? No one just teched in a Magnezone, right? You were using it for Lost Burn and stuff. Like, it was a great ability otherwise, right? You had a +1 Abyssal hand in an ability, draw till you have 6 in your hand. But it was really for Lost Burn. That's why you played it. You played it as an attacking deck. So Azelf's interesting because so far all these have been talking about setup and drawing cards, where Azelf is one that's on this list as not really a support draw setup. The other day we had some people in at Tabletop Village here from Portland, and they were like, hey, we heard about this place from Mello's YouTube channel, so shout out if you're listening. They were here for the Mariners games and whatnot, and he wanted to try some 2010. And he draws a card and benches an Azelf turn 1. And I said, hey, you gotta think about this. Why are you doing this? Like, why are you benching it blind? Do you know it's prized? Like, what's going on here? And he's like, no, but I figured I'd play it since it's in my hand. It's not a card that's gonna get you anything set up turn 1 unless you know something is prized. But if you're going first in that format, you're not gonna really search your deck ever, right? Because all you can do is attach and attack. It's a good card, don't get me wrong. It's arguably better than Hisui and Heavy Ball, right? It does virtually the same thing. When you bench Azelf, you search your prizes for a Pokemon, grab it, put another card in there, right? You don't shuffle your prizes either, so you get a free town map out of it, but just for you. So, like, you get to look at your prizes and know where everything is. It's a good card. It's not really a setup card, though. It was a one-of in every single deck, so it is a butter card. It goes in everything, right? But again, it's not a setup card. So where do you put it? Do you put it in A tier because it is butter? Do you put it in solid because you're like, hey, it's not really a setup Pokemon, it's not really a thing? What do you do? I think in this argument, based off the fact that it is not really a setup, I'm just going to put it in hybrid for now. It's not really a setup Pokemon. It's not really getting you anything. I don't know. It might be butter. I have a feeling a lot of things are going to go in butter, though, looking at the rest of this list. So, I don't know. It enabled a lot of things, but it's not as S tier. Here's the thing, though. It was played like in a one-of in literally every single deck. Like, why would you not play an Azelf? Right? Like, why would you not? It's hard. That's a hard one to place. It could literally go anywhere here and be fine. So, instead, we're going to put it in hybrid. Drizzle. For all you current players, you're playing right now, you're like, where's my boy Drizzle? Right? It's funny how this is, like, besides from Crowbat, like, the only, like, support Pokemon that we have on this list, right? It's that shows how amazing it is. It's a good card. It was not played when it first came out, though. Right? When it first came out, we were still ending the tag team era, and no one was even looking at these cards. It wasn't until like Scoop Up Net came out and the Dene GX rotated and these big the big go fast things rotated that Drizzile really started to shine. And nowadays, it's played in Drizzile decks, right? It's Drizzile plus Blah, right? Funnily enough, Arceus plus Blah is also a big part of this format, and you put them two together, you get one of the best decks in the format. So I think Drizzile is a very, very, very good card. It's not butter, though, right? It doesn't go in everything. There are a lot of decks out there. They're playing a tournament out there right now. Shout out to Friday Night Tournaments at Tabletop. They're playing a tournament out there right now, and the top 2 decks aren't playing Drizzile. I don't even think the top 4 are. So, like, you know, it's a good card. Very, very good card, but it's not butter. I think it goes in the B tier. Unknown, I think it goes in the F tier. It's, you know, no one played it for support. It lives in an era where Shaymin exists. It lives in an era where Versus Secret Draw engines exist. You played it for very specific reasons, right? You played it to get Pokemon on the discard pile. You played it to draw an extra card if you were tutoring something for whatever reason. Like, you played it in, I don't know, maybe put it in D tier. You put it in decks that played Maxies and Archies, right? Sometimes just to like draw through an extra card. Right, there are situations where you could like bench an unknown, shuffle draw something, and then use it again. It just wasn't in every deck. It's just outclassed. That's really what it is. I would say same with Talonflame. Talonflame was also put in a lot of specific decks. It's a really cool effect though. I love the effect of Talonflame. They should do more stuff like this. Instead of this card's in your hand at the opening of the game, you could start with it as a stage 2. And the attack is 40 damage, search your deck for 2 cards for colorless, and it's got free retreat. Really cool setup Pokemon, right? But it didn't get splashed in everything. It was played in niche, like Aerodactyl decks. It was played sometimes in like Night March decks, I guess, if you wanted to start it, but that was weird. It was played in Greninja decks for a while, but then there was a whole debate of like, do we play it or do we not? That card went in and out of that deck. It's just outclassed by a lot of other things. So it was only in very specific niche decks. It gets D tier from me. Crowbat is one that is a solid card. It's not egg, it's not butter, right? It doesn't go in everything, but it's a very, very solid card. Everyone plays it, everyone knows it. Bench, draw type of 6 in your hand, you can't use it twice. It's just a good card. It's just a solid card. It's not busted though. Holland's Cast Form is one where I asked Kevin, is this a setup Pokemon? Right? I was like, we should put this in here, but is it a setup Pokemon? In Holland Engine decks where you play nothing but Holland's Pokemon, yeah, because you can attack with it, right? You can attack to draw cards. But its main purpose, and the main Pokemon of all the Holland energies, is to get double rainbow in the format. Right? That's its main purpose. I think it goes in B tier. I think some people might disagree with me. I think it's an A tier support, right? But it's a good... All of the Holland energies are good because you can search it for Pokemon that turn into energies. So why would you not? I think Shout Out Mimic is also the same thing as this is hard. It's either C or B because it was played a lot when it first came out, but it's also solid. We're gonna put it in B, C tier just because I don't have a lot in C tier. That's the only reason. So if you fast forward to the end of the video and you're like, why is Shout Out in C tier? It probably should be B, but we're gonna put it there. And for the sake of time, I'm putting it there. Smeargle also gets C tier status. It's a good card. It was very solid, but it wasn't put in everything. It wasn't played a lot. It really started to shine towards the later era. It didn't start really becoming a thing until like Sky Aura Bridge came out. And once supporters were like worth copying in your opponent's hand, when everyone was playing 4N and 4 Juniper, Smeargle became one of those two things. And you can free retreat with Sky Aura, right? So Smeargle became great like that. It was like Tech as a one-of before then, but you know, Smeargle. Ninetales, aforementioned Ninetales, it's I'm gonna just put it in a hybrid category at this point. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's a hybrid card. Sprint Zepstrika gets C tier from me. It was only in niche decks. It wasn't in every single thing. But you know, discard draw 4. It was played in like Beast Box. And like maybe one or two other things. It might even be D tier. I'm gonna put it in D tier. It looks better in D tier, honestly. The problem is I played this card a lot. I'll put it in D tier. And we have Sun and Moon Lost Thunder format built out there. There is one deck that plays Zepstrika, right? So it's D tier. And then Dunsparce gets A tier from me. I know it wasn't used its entire life, especially once Hollands came out. I get it. But it was in almost everything for a good portion of its life. And I love Strike and Run. It's a good card. It's good in alternative formats. It's good in Cube. This card's great. It should be A tier. It was butter. It was in everything back then. So I think that's my on-the-fly tier list. I think it looks good. These aren't ordered, obviously. I think this first one... Let's see. I'd put Uxie there. These would go towards the bottom, I think. That feels right. Solid. This needs to be at the top of solid, I think. Gosh, what else needs to be at the top of solid? I don't know. Solid's a hard one to order. This one here, probably, like I said, Shout Out probably is up there. This is probably at the bottom of C tier. That feels right. This definitely gets up here. This is definitely at the bottom. There's that, and then the hybrid's just hybrid, right? It's hard to rank these. It's really hard to rank these ones. Because, like, to rank these, like, this, it would probably, you know what? F it, we're gonna rank it. This will go there, then this. This probably angers a lot of old school players, but whatever. This goes here. I think this was more impactful than Empoleon ever was, unfortunately. Oh, well, this goes here. Ah, shoot. Okay. My boy Empoleon's so far low. Anyway, that does it for me. If you had a disagreement, put it in the comments, right? That's what YouTubers are supposed to say, right? But comment stuff, like, comment, subscribe, sell out, that sort of thing. If you disagree with me, please let me know. This was on the fly on a Friday night. I'm supposed to be running the shop right now, and I'm clearly not. So this was done with very, I mean, I did look at it beforehand, but also very little preview. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you want to see more of me, or if you have any other ideas you want me to talk about. I could talk forever. Sorry, Kevin, I didn't keep it under half hour, but I was darn close. So good luck to everyone at Worlds. If you're at Worlds, say hi to the people. I'm going to stay here and run the shop. I'll be there next year, though, for sure. Playing in day 2, most likely. So if you got anything, if you got anything for me, let me know. Other than that, I'm going to sign off. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.